player like Caitlin Clark, Kelly Kroskoff is my guest from the Indiana Fever. When you have a player like Caitlin Clark that is, I don't need to tell anybody about what Caitlin Clark is, right? We know that.
Yep.
But even though she's practicing with her teammates, even though she's around it, even though she's she's pretty ubiquitous within the field house when you go to different events there. Mm-hmm. But that's different than being in games. How long does it realistically take over the course of a season when you are reinserting something that is that big a straw mixing the drink to an extent for everybody to get that cohesiveness on the floor together back once again?
Yeah.
Pay close attention to what Kelly Kroskoff just said. Because of her IQ, because of her passing ability, because of the way she sees the floor, she makes it easy for everyone else. Those are her exact words describing Caitlin Clark's strengths. Now here's the problem. Everything she just praised requires Caitlin to have the ball in her hands, running the offense, making decisions. But head coach Stephanie White has publicly stated she wants Clark playing small forward and operating off the ball. So which is it? Because those two visions are fundamentally incompatible.
Oh, we have got to get into this. Now, we know the Indiana Fever's front office has been an absolute dumpster fire. An absolute dumpster fire, guys. We all know that. They look like they are lost. They have no clue what to do, where to turn, what's going on. President of basketball operations and business operations for the Indiana Fever, Kelly Kroskoff, took to the Query and Company podcast. Shout out to them. And she went in on how they're going to try to reinsert Caitlin Clark and get her back acclimated. And then what was the thought with the draft picks? Okay, we know the Indiana Fever have went and they've signed 97 5'9" and under point guards when they already have the best point guard in the world on their team.
The Indiana Fever made a series of roster decisions this offseason that have their fan base genuinely confused. They drafted 5'9" point guard Raven Johnson in the first round. Then they used another pick on Shatori Walker-Kimbrough, another guard under 6 feet tall. Then they signed a veteran guard to a development contract. When the dust settled, heading into training camp, the Fever roster had 8 guards, 3 forwards, and 1 center. And remember, they already have Caitlin Clark, who just led the league in assists and became the first rookie ever to average over 8 assists per game. The math isn't mathing here.
And what they're doing as far as the reserve players and why they went and signed all these guards and all this stuff. Let's take a listen.
It's a convergence, honestly, of all of those factors. It came to grow to this point where the greater...
Long time. So, I get it. To be tweaked, or you feel pretty good about it.
We'll probably add another, actually, we may be doing announcing it today, another backcourt. To your point about the angst of the backcourt, the guard play, you got to be ready. I mean, we were able to salvage it last year, but yeah, so we're going to tweak a little bit. We have development.
Can you break the news right here? Can you tell me who it is right here?
I mean, I got to check with my people to see where it is in the pipeline here. But a veteran guard that I think is really going to help us. We have the 2 development spots. I didn't know if you knew.
So Kelly Kroskoff went on the Query and Company podcast to explain the strategy. And what she revealed is even more concerning than the roster construction itself. She's talking about development spots, 2-way contracts, converting players from the practice squad. She mentions they're adding another veteran backcourt player, but listen to what she's not talking about. Size, rebounding, interior defense. The New York Liberty, who eliminated Indiana in the playoffs, go 6'4" across their entire starting lineup when Sabrina Ionescu is out. They're massive, physical, and they dominated the Fever on the boards. Indiana's response? Sign more guards under 5'10".
Optimism coming into this year and knowing that when they get back out on the floor together, because we started seeing glimpses of it, when everybody's healthy and back on the court together, it's, we're hopeful it's going to take us a long way.
But see, that's the thing. I think y'all felt like y'all could just run it back because of, listen, teams got better. The New York Liberty got, outside of Sabrina, they go 6'4" across the board. Okay, we needed to adjust and improve. And I feel like y'all just wanted to keep things afloat. And then you went and got all these little ass guards. It just doesn't even make sense. And what do you mean reacclimate her? They need to get reacclimated to her, not the other way around. This is the Clark show.
Kelly,
Here's where it gets really telling. Crosskop says they needed to shore up the guard position because they kept losing players to injury last year. She mentions they were able to salvage it, but barely. So the front office looked at that situation and decided the solution was more of the same. Not better injury prevention, not a deeper, more versatile roster, just more small guards who play the same position as their generational talent. And she frames this as optimism, as if running it back with minor tweaks is somehow a championship strategy when they got exposed in the playoffs.
And Johnson.
Idea of trying to always find another guard. 10 is you're trying to get, obviously, best player you can, but positionally for us, we were really focused on a guard. We were ready if that wasn't available, but we were focused on a guard, and Raven was one of those guards. So defensively, certainly somebody that can back up Caitlin, that is going to be on a rookie scale contract for a long time, that can grow into our team long term. This idea of trying to always find another guard every year is getting, we knew we had to shore that up if we could in the draft. And we knew, after obviously watching Raven all the years at South Carolina and knowing the kind of pedigree that she has, we were thrilled that she was there.
and one of the things that, and I was curious if you factor in these kinds of things, okay? I have a great deal of
Now let's talk about the Raven Johnson pick specifically, because this is where the disconnect becomes crystal clear. Krauskopf says they were focused on finding another guard. Defensively, somebody who can back up Caitlin. Those are her words. Back up Caitlin. Except Caitlin Clark doesn't need a backup. She needs complementary pieces. She needs a defensive-minded wing who can guard the opponent's best perimeter player so Caitlin can conserve energy on that end. She needs a stretch four who can space the floor. She needs rim protection. What she doesn't need is another 5'9" guard sitting on the bench learning the system. And here's the kicker. With that same draft capital, Hannah Stuelke was still on the board. 6'2" forward from Iowa, who played with Caitlin for years, knows her tendencies, can rebound, defend multiple positions, and shoot from range. Perfect fit. They passed on her to draft another small guard.
respect for Dawn Staley as a coach, and I think that she has a competitiveness about her, but clearly her record is such that she knows and understands the game of basketball. Do you factor that in terms of the element of training or coaching a player has in their background and who it was that was mentoring them before you get them?
Absolutely. I mean, those are all the things, just the intangibles that what they're exposed to every day from a coach like her. I mean, there's many great coaches in the game, but we know Dawn, obviously her track record as a player and Olympian and so forth. But, when you're exposed to that kind of coaching and mindset and mentality, that they're probably prepared a little better. I had one of our scouts, it's a new scout with us this year, and she went to one of their practices this year at South Carolina, and she walked away from there. She was like, Kelly, I'm telling you, like any player that comes out of this program, they're going to be ready for the WNBA. I mean, their practices are like pro practices, just the preparation and everything that goes into it. And again, there's a lot of great coaches out there, but it was just, something that you do know that you're getting with that player.
But wait, it gets better. The justification Krauskopf gives is that Raven Johnson played for Dawn Staley at South Carolina, and Staley runs pro-style practices. She even sent a scout to watch their practices, and the scout came back raving about how prepared South Carolina players are for the WNBA. That's great. Nobody's questioning Raven Johnson's work ethic or preparation. The question is positional need. You can have the most well-coached, fundamentally sound backup point guard in the world, and it doesn't matter if your starting point guard is healthy and playing 40 minutes a night. Meanwhile, you're getting killed on the glass and giving up second chance points because you have no size.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've been around it a long time. It does take a minute. But the thing about Caitlin that we've had a lot of great players here. She makes it so easy for everybody else because of her IQ, because of her passing ability, the way she sees the floor. I mean,
Okay, because of her passing ability and because of her IQ, but Stephanie White wants the girl playing small forward. She wants her playing off the ball, so everything you're saying doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. Like what are y'all doing over there?
I mean, she really creates a lot of ease on the offensive end, and just, it's not that hard to play. You got to find the right players that kind of understand that, but it still does take time. There were moments last year when we were down the stretch where we were like, good Lord, imagine if we had, Caitlin back and healthy. And then we were losing players along the way, but thinking about the opportunities ahead of us and knowing that, okay, if we get everybody healthy again, we lost Sophie partway through. I mean, she was shooting over 40% from the three, really helping us spread the floor. So there was a lot of...
Let's go back to that comment about reacclimating Caitlin Clark to the offense. Crosskop was asked how long it takes to reinsert a player of Caitlin's caliber after she missed time with an ankle injury. And her answer reveals everything about how this front office thinks. She says it takes a minute, but Caitlin makes it easy for everyone because of her IQ and passing. Then she talks about getting everyone healthy again, mentions Sophie Cunningham shooting over 40% from three before she got hurt, and frames it all as optimism for this season. But here's what's missing from that entire answer. Any acknowledgement that the rest of the team needs to adjust to Caitlin, not the other way around. She's talking about reinserting Caitlin into their system when the system should be built around her from day one. That's what you do with generational talent. You don't make them fit. You build around them.
Could just run it back because of, listen, teams got better. The New York Liberty got, outside of Sabrina, they go 6'4" across the board. Okay, we needed to adjust and improve, and I feel like y'all just wanted to keep things afloat. And then you went and got all these little ass guards. It just doesn't even make sense. And what do you mean reacclimate her? They need to get reacclimated to her, not the other way around. This is the Clark show.
Kelly.
And that phrase keeps coming up. Reacclimate, reinsert, get her back into the flow. Like she's a role player returning from injury, not the player who single-handedly turned the Indiana Fever from a laughingstock into a playoff team and tripled their attendance. The New York Liberty don't talk about reinserting Sabrina Ionescu into their offense. They talk about getting her the ball and letting her cook. The Las Vegas Aces don't reacclimate A'ja Wilson. They clear out and let her dominate. But Indiana is over here treating their franchise player like she needs to earn her spot back in the rotation. Here's what makes this entire situation so frustrating for Fever fans. The front office keeps talking about depth, development contracts, and backup plans, but they're solving problems that don't exist while ignoring the ones that cost them a championship run. You know what Indiana's biggest issue was in the playoffs against Connecticut? They got demolished on the boards, out-rebounded by double digits in multiple games. They had no answer for Alyssa Thomas attacking the paint, no interior presence to protect the rim when their defense broke down. And their solution this offseason was to draft more guards. Kelly Krauskopf mentioned they lost Sophie Cunningham to injury and how much that hurt their three-point shooting. Fair point. But you know what else happened when Sophie went down? They had no size to replace her defensive versatility. She's 6 feet tall and could guard multiple positions. When she got hurt, they were forced to play even smaller lineups, which made their rebounding problem even worse. So what did they do? They signed Shatori Walker-Kimbrough, who's 5'9", then drafted Raven Johnson, also 5'9". The pattern here isn't depth, it's doubling down on a flawed roster construction philosophy. And before anyone says these are just development players who won't get minutes, Krauskopf herself said they're planning to convert one of these guards to a standard contract during the season. That means they're taking up a roster spot that could go to a player who actually addresses their needs. A rebounding forward, a defensive-minded wing with size, a stretch four who can space the floor and crash the glass. Instead, they're stockpiling point guards like they're going out of style. It's roster construction by panic, not by strategy. They had injury problems with their guards last year, so they overcompensated by hoarding guards this year, completely ignoring the fact that their playoff loss had nothing to do with guard depth and everything to do with getting physically dominated in the paint. Think about what Caitlin Clark actually needs to succeed at the highest level. She needs shooters who can space the floor when she drives and kicks. She needs athletic finishers who can run the floor in transition and convert her passes into easy buckets. She needs defenders who can handle tough matchups so she's not exhausted on both ends. And she needs rebounders who can secure possessions and get her the ball to push the pace. Now look at what Indiana gave her. more ball handlers, more players who need touches to be effective, more guards who operate in the same space as she does. It's like they watched Caitlin break the rookie assist record and thought, you know what she needs? More people who want to handle the ball. The Hannah Stulka situation is particularly maddening because it was such an obvious fit. She played with Caitlin at Iowa for multiple years. She knows how to play off her, where to be for kick-out threes, how to set screens that free her up. She's 6'2", can rebound, and shot 38% from three last season, and she was available when Indiana picked Raven Johnson. But the front office was locked into this idea that they needed another point guard. Why? Because they wanted someone who could back up Caitlin. Except Caitlin doesn't need a backup in the traditional sense. She's going to play 35 to 40 minutes a night in important games. What she needs are players who complement her skill set when she's on the floor, not someone who replicates it when she sits. And that brings us back to Stephanie White's comments about playing Caitlin at small forward. If that's genuinely the plan, if they really want her operating off the ball more, then everything Kelly Krauskopf said in this interview is contradictory. You can't praise Caitlin's passing ability and court vision, then turn around and take the ball out of her hands. Those skills only matter when she's running the offense, so either Krauskopf and White aren't on the same page about how to use their best player, or one of them is saying what sounds good in interviews while planning something completely different. Either scenario is concerning for a franchise that's supposed to be building around a generational talent. The development contract strategy is another head-scratcher. Krauskopf talks about it like it's this innovative approach, comparing it to two-way contracts in the NBA. And sure, it gives them roster flexibility, but you know what else gives you roster flexibility? Drafting players who actually fit your needs so you don't have to stash them on development deals and hope they work out. The Liberty didn't need development contracts to build a championship roster. They identified their needs, drafted and signed players who filled those needs, and built a cohesive system. Indiana is out here playing roster Jenga, trying to fit mismatched pieces together and hoping it somehow works. And let's talk about that comment regarding teams getting better. Krauskopf acknowledged that other teams improved, that the competition is tougher, but then she falls back on this idea that getting healthy and running it back will be enough. That's not a championship mentality, that's a hope we squeak into the playoffs again mentality. The Minnesota Lynx retooled their entire front court. The Las Vegas Aces added depth at every position. The New York Liberty got even bigger and more physical. Meanwhile, Indiana is talking about development spots and backup point guards like they're one injury away from contention instead of one legitimate front court player away from being taken seriously. Here's the reality that Fever fans need to understand. This front office is building a team to survive, not to win. They're so focused on depth and injury replacement that they've lost sight of what actually wins championships. Star power, yes, but also roster construction that maximizes that star power, complementary pieces that cover weaknesses, size and physicality that can match up with elite teams in playoff series. Indiana has the star. They have Caitlin Clark, who's already one of the best players in the league as a rookie. But instead of building around her strengths, they're building around their fears. Fear of injuries, fear of depth issues, fear of making bold moves that might not work out. So they play it safe, draft the well-coached point guard from a prestigious program, sign veteran guards who won't complain about minutes, stockpile development players who give them options, and hope that somehow getting healthy and running it back will be enough to compete with teams that are actively trying to win championships. That's not a plan, that's a prayer. And Caitlin Clark deserves better than a front office that's praying their way to contention instead of building their way there. So the question Fever fans need to ask themselves is this: do you trust this front office to maximize Caitlin Clark's prime years? Because based on this offseason, based on these roster decisions, based on Kelly Krauskopf's explanations that raise more questions than they answer, the evidence suggests they're more concerned with not making mistakes than they are with making bold moves that could actually win a championship. And in a league where championship windows are small and competition is fierce, playing it safe is the riskiest move of all. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Indiana's guard-heavy approach makes sense, or are they wasting Caitlin Clark's talent with poor roster construction? Hit that subscribe button because we're going to keep tracking this situation all season long.